Hailstone brimstone them. With lightning them. Fire hailstone brimstone them. Thunder earthquake lightning them. Fire hailstone. Putting out and taking out on the criminal tyrant of digital cyber war and baby digital thunder earthquake lightning them fire hailstone brimstone them thunder hailstone brimstone them fire hailstone brimstone them people are revolting we are the people are revolting rebel people are revolting we are the people are revolting rebel people are revolting we are the people are revolting rebel people are revolting we are revolting thunder earthquake lightning them fire hailstone brimstone them thunder earthquake brimstone them fire hailstone brimstone them thunder earthquake lightning them fire hailstone brimstone them thunder earthquake lightning them fire hailstone brimstone them I go on that thing and messages that subliminal tree of knowledge of good and evil is the one Rastafari.
And greetings and welcome yet again to another live broadcast of Building Legacy. We figured we start appropriately on this illustrious day of April 10th, 2021. There are a number of observances. Of course, we always send our heartfelt prayers, healing mercies to our brethren and sistren in St. Vincent and Grenadines, enduring fire,
yes,
volcanic fire, brimstone, lightning. We need to make sure we hold them up high and pray for all to be healed and to get into places to restore some degree of normalcy, even in the midst of anti-normalcy and chaos happening on the earth. So again, we welcome each and every viewer, listener within earshot to Building Legacy, a broadcast that is co-hosted by my illustrious African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Dr. SandRa.
Yay! Give that.
Along with myself, Ms. Sutmut As, with short, Senate Dr. ChenziRa. Right? And we are being joined today by another one of our illustrious Queen grandmothers, Mama Sangoma Makeda Kamara. We would need to keep this energy up because we know that there's a lot of energy that would like for us to stay in a space of being dormant, a space of being weary and tired beyond measure. And even if we thought to think that we were, when we listen to Empress Queen Desiree, and that's from a very live performance right here in I St. Croix, giving thanks and praise and upliftment to the Earth Light, the 130th Earth Light of Her Imperial Majesty, Empress Menen Asfa.
Yes,
I just had to give that breath.
No.
So that, you know, it was a lot of wonderful, positive energy. So you were hearing some of us yelling in the background. You were hearing people trying to sing the lyrics with her. And the whole idea was like upliftment, because we do experience this brimstone, thunder, lightning, because there's some serious energies happening.
Serious energy are going into the hurt.
You know, so we just would like to open up sacred space. And before we introduce and do the proper introduction of our illustrious Queen Grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda, and welcome her, because that's going to be a whole other lesson. So those of you who do not have your pads out, bring your pads, you know, your iPad, your writing pad, your cell phone notepad. There you go. I'm ready. because it's going to be
You
some
know,
lessons, some vibes. So, illustrious African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Dr. SandRa, please share your welcome.
give thanks and blessed greetings to all. I want to also echo sentiments expressed to remember our family who are currently facing nature in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Their lives are being challenged right now, and the energy is reverberating throughout the world. So I really just want to be solemn enough to properly receive whatever it is that is to come through us as we broadcast right now. African Queen Mother Warrior, Sr.Dr. ChenziRa.
Yes, I.
I am so glad that you played that track, because I came to this broadcast today feeling quite solemn as a student, because I really want to hear Queen Grandmama Makeda. And so I have my notepad and I have my paper and everything, but I recognize that my spirit was, and then you played that track and I just like got triggered, like, whoa, fire, brimstone, on them. Yes, yes, okay, I'm ignited. I am ignited. So I give thanks for your illustrious, amazing, phenomenal energy and fire. We touched base this week and I witnessed your fire again with your king man. I said, something has happened. The people there are trouble, African people, something has. So I came today to say, I need to know what's happening. We need to know what's happening globally. Africans need to know what's happening to Africans globally.
Yes.
We need to know, because no longer can we be touched and others know nothing about it. You touch one, you touch all. It's African people under attack. Let us be clear. It is not just in St. Croix, and it is not just in Barbados, and it is not just in the UK. African people globally are under attack. We need the energies of our queen grandmamas to bring the wisdom, to remind us of the way, to build the legacy so that we can ensure that we teach our children and the legacies are secured. So I join you, African Queen Mother Warrior, Sr.Dr. ChenziRa, in welcoming, wow, a queen among queens. I cannot wait. I give thanks for the opportunity to be sitting here and to learn from you, a wonderful grandmama Makeda. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
So, for the purposes of those of you that have not had the joy and privilege of hearing from our illustrious Queen Grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda, I'd like to just give the brief introduction so that we can cover all the paper portions first. And it actually starts with the term, a brief introduction. Makeda Kamara is a descendant of a captured African ancestors who provided free and cheap labor throughout the Caribbean and Central America. Her ancestors went from the sugar plantations of Jamaica, Barbados, and Antigua to Cuba after the successful Haitian Revolution. In the 1850s, her great-grandparents moved to Panama to construct the Panama Canal. Her parents were born in Panama. Our illustrious Queen Grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda, moved to the US to attend college in the 60s and became an activist in the Black Power movement as a member of the Black Panther Party. In addition, she, along with other Black students, revolted continued the fight for the establishment of one of the first African and African American studies programs at Brandeis. In 1972, after completing her undergraduate studies at Brandeis University, where she majored in the African Studies program, she moved to Tanzania to teach under the great Pan-Africanist, the Honorable Mwalimu Nyerere, in his liberation schools. She was further schooled whilst there by ancestor Walter Rodney, the illustrious Dr. Walter Rodney, originally of Guyana, who was teaching at the time at the University of Dar es Salaam while completing his classic, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Our illustrious Queen Grandmother has lived and worked in Uganda, Benin, respective republics, Casamance, Senegal, Zambia, Azania, South Africa. In the Gambia, as an educator, as a midwife, I'm gonna come back to that, as an educator, as a midwife, Sangoma, as well as an HIV specialist. Her greatest pride is having served women and their families in an almost 50-year career from all over the world. She's dedicated to humanized birth, saving the planet from ourselves, ending misogyny, monopoly capitalism, and racism. Her dream is a world built on equity, justice, and shared sustainable wealth. Then, and only then, will humanity come of age. I am honored to be able to introduce our illustrious Queen Grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda. And I always have to add, and she helped with the delivery of our youngest grandchildren right here in St. Croix. And those two young princes came, put it up, watch the mother, watch the father, watch the grandparents, and Queen Grandmother Makeda. I was just here, just being in this space. But she is humanized birth personified, and we're grateful. We're grateful. Woo! Let's welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. My heart is full. And if I cry, it's my humanity showing. I lost two sisters in the span of 8 days. Two wonderful grand midwives. One from Corona and the other from cancer. She was young, but she lived a very full life, very smart, very wonderful midwife. And it hurt me so deeply because it came on the heel of losing the last member of my mother's side of the family. And to compound it, for the first time in my life, and I've been on the planet 7 decades plus, I saw a picture of my grandfather and found out he was a carpenter because he was buried in a cemetery that was not taken care of. And a group of Panamanians, I recall my second brother always said, we got to do something about where our ancestors are buried. Now he's having his own health issues. And about 4 years ago, a group formed to preserve and restore these cemeteries along the Panama Canal in Afro-Antillanos or Afro-Caribbean communities. And the way this came about is migrant families lose each other along the way, as we well know. And my grandnephew, my great nephew, I don't even know how to say those things, is doing a project on his family. And we can only go back to the family that we knew. And so my sister had the presence of mind to go to the group and ask them to find the graves of the Trowers and the Millets. And lo and behold, I saw a picture of my grandfather. My eldest brother is 85. We didn't know him. All of them died building and working on that, the eighth wonder of the world, as did thousands, over 50,000 between the French and the Americans, at least 50, 60,000. That's what they tell us died. And he looked just like my uncle, and found out he was a carpenter, and he was born in 1876. And I looked at their salaries. My grandmother, who I grew up with, made what, 11 or 12 cents an hour. My grandfather's brother, who was a photographer, made $50 a month. My grandfather, who was a carpenter, made 24 cents an hour. And his son, my uncle, who died early, the men in my family all died early. My father was the longest living male, and he died at 77 years old. So this has been a week, or the past 2 weeks have brought up so many things for me. And I'm trying to keep myself together and not cry. And to hold space and to livigate myself. And on top of that, my sister, in helping her grandson, paid money to white folks to find out our ancestry, only to find out that between Benin Republic and Nigeria, 60% of my ancestors came from. And I just thank the Most High Spirit that my daughter, my second child, was born where? In Benin Republic, into the hands of a traditional midwife, whom I couldn't speak to because I couldn't speak the language, but I trusted her hands. And she is now married to a Nigerian American, first generation Nigerian American. So I say to myself, that is a sign from the Most High that whatever journey she has put me on has been a good one. And so that gave me some pause to continue this struggle. Then the news in the Grenadines. And then last night, and this is the last thing I will say, and then open up for discussion. I was perusing the internet looking for something to look at. And I realized that, and I thought about you, ChenziRa, because you ever heard of the Hadza people?
Yeah.
They're hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
That even preceded Kemet.
Yeah.
In the Rift Valley of Tanzania.
Right. More Nubian or ancestral Ainu. Yeah.
And it was amazing. And they're dying out. And we are doing it to each other. Another hunter-gatherer tribe, the Datoga, are displacing them because they're being displaced by those of us in power as we seek to develop. And in the process of developing, our very roots are being destroyed. The knowledge that the Hadza people have about nature and living sustainably on the planet, they only use what they need. And they never just take and take. It was an amazing, amazing, amazing documentary. And then I look at the people that are working to preserve them. They're all Europeans that are living in conditions that I'm not sure that even at this age I could live in myself. But the information and their way of life and their way of thinking resonates with me. And I said, there's so much that I know, but there's so much that I need to learn. And how do we, I remember my husband was writing his thesis in the 70s, my ex-husband, I should say, and he's into development. And my question was development for whom and development for what? What are we developing into? Skyscrapers, all of this stuff that burns energy and causes more harm than benefits. What is development? The term of what are we talking about? These were questions that I had when I was in the School of Public Health studying environmental health, which has now been replaced with sustainable. development for whom and development for what? So what are we asking? What are we doing as we continue to disrespect the planet? All of us, me too. I mean, as much as I try to live sustainably, but how do we do this? What are we doing? That's my question now. I have my own grandchildren, and I worry because I know, like the Iroquois said, everything we do impacts 7 generations. And it just hurts my heart so much that we have so far removed that I see it in birth, I see it in illnesses, the things that we accept as normal, they're not. Even conscious folk. So how do we turn that around? That's all that I ask at this point, because I don't have all the answers either. So I say this to say that I'm a seeker. And one thing I have learned is that I'm not afraid to unlearn what I thought was right.
Wow, that alone, that alone is so powerful. So powerful. The questions you're asking are questions that need to be asked. What are we developing, and what is the cost of development, and who is it we're developing for, and have we lost our way? And in the development, I mean, you spoke about the roots coming up. When people talk about development from a Eurocentric perspective, notwithstanding the fact that it may be Europeans that are doing some of the work to recover, if we look at development from a Eurocentric perspective, we miss so much and we do so much harm. And not being afraid to ask the question or to unlearn what we've learned is such a powerful place. When you speak like you do, I think you give permission to so many people who are scared. They're scared to ask a question because they don't want to be seen not to know. And there's so much we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So much we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Queen Mama Sangoma Makeda. I did not include the Sangoma before. I apologize. I think it's so important that we really recognize and honor those among us who are emerging more visibly to teach those of us who are scared to say, we don't know, or my head is full of learnedness and I need to unlearn it because it's causing damage.
Mm-hmm.
So already I am just wanting to sit back and sit at your feet and listen. That you bring spirits through to be doing that purposeful work is so powerful. And to elevate the title Mama. Oh, please.
Oh God, you all have been balm for my soul. It's been balm for my soul because most of what I learned from the families that I've been exposed to. Everything, I swear. I have been blessed by having, I worked when I finished, I did traditional midwifery. Unfortunately, the average person in the United States cannot afford to pay for traditional midwifery. And that's when I decided I'm going to go back to school yet again, because I had to become a nurse, which I never wanted to. I've never worked as a nurse. I just went to nursing school so I could go to midwifery school, so I could get a CNM, so that I could deal with the vast majority of people that look like you and I. and brown people and other kinds of peoples from around the world who go to hospitals, and most of them are practiced on by these big doctors that go and practice in city hospitals. They learn on us, then they open up private practices. And I wanted to be able to work with those women. So I put myself through hell, which it was. And every step of my life, I swear to God, Great Spirit has opened doors for me. I am not making this up, because I was able to get a full ride and be on the advisory board of the midwifery program that was designed to increase the critical mass of midwives of color and to deal with what? The pandemic, the local endemic situation of the rise of HIV in the 80s. How blessed could I have been to be on the board simply because I was doing home births with Mama Shafia Monroe in Boston, and we were doing things without the internet, when phone bills were very expensive, grassroots organizing for the then Black Power people in the 70s and 80s who did not want to go to Babylon hospitals and have home births. We were just dumb, lucky, and blessed, because we were learning as we were doing in creating this. And then to have been on the advisory board, Shafia one day turned to me and said, they starting this program and you're the only one with all these degrees, so you need to be on the board. And I ended up on the board to establish this program that was supposed to use those midwives from Thailand, from China, from Korea, from Santo Domingo, from Jamaica, who had the skills but weren't licensed. So they got a 6-month refresher program and they were able to sit for the exam. Needless to say, like all these programs, it died. It no longer exists, nor does the program that I went to exist. It no longer exists, which I would like to speak about at some point. But what it did was that it focused, it was the first time a school of midwifery, was in a school of public health, not in a school of nursing. I don't want to study about Florence Nightingale. That didn't interest me. Okay. And Mary Beckridge, that big racist white woman who is the queen of midwifery. No, I did not want to study. And so the presence of mind was to put it in a school of public health and open it up so that we're not only doing it with women when during their pregnancy, but through in their lifespan. And mind you, people didn't even though the core curriculum and the competencies were the same as they were in regular midwifery schools, that's the mere fact that it was in a school of public health, and had a whole primary module around the care of women throughout the life. People didn't say, well, they're not real midwives. But of course, you know, women are the entry into health. So you must go through women. And you don't stop needing interactions with women and their families after the baby is born. It's throughout their lives. So it was a novel program. I was very proud to be part of it. And I was part of the first 9 graduates of that program. I mean, and it was just as if God, she has been guiding my path.
We give thanks. We give thanks.
All the time I give thanks, because I didn't have to pay out of pocket. Even my child was able to go to a very progressive daycare. They paid for everything. And the only thing I had to do was to work in an area of high infant mortality for 2 years, which is what I was going to do anyway.
When the divine is involved, it's amazing how the path just, you know, just the next step is laid out in front of you, and all you have to do is to pay attention, and do what you are supposed to do. The path will be laid out.
Yes.
I don't even try to work it out anymore. I'm just like, okay, this is how the divine works. Why should I try and work out the detail? All I have to do is be diligent and be Obedient.
Yeah,
Be obedient, be present, and be diligent.
that's exactly. And even with the roadblocks, because my children were young, and the worst thing to do is to go to midwifery school or medical school with young children. And yes, I was married at the time to a very progressive man, but child rearing and child care and everything to keep a household going, even amongst progressive Black men, is still a woman's job. And I was constantly fighting that because I've always fought sexism and racism and imperialism because they're tied together.
Mm.
And in the progressive movement in the 70s was very misogynistic. I remember Stokely saying that the only thing that women can do is be in the prone position. Now I love Kwame, but that was what the thing was. And that a lot of that was rampant, but they were strong women, you know, because I wasn't gonna walk behind anybody. I had 3 older brothers. I grew up with 3 older brothers. So I grew up fighting. You know, my oldest brother told me the other day, we never thought you were going to make it. We worried about you. You got involved in all this. But you have to be, when you have 3 older brothers and you live in a sexist world, you got to learn to get some fight in you.
That's right.
I was not a good girl. You know, I didn't follow the rules.
Mm.
And, but it's been amazing. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting and crying and thinking these past 2 weeks, because I've been through a lot of hurt.
Queen Mama Sangoma, can you say something about the value of crying?
It was so healing. I mean, when my sister called me and said, girl, you know, I said, what? She says, I saw Granny, that's what we call Granny's husband, because we didn't know him. And when I saw him, I said, oh my God, he was a carpenter just like Cleveland. That's my mother's brother. And I couldn't help it. I just started to cry. I wasn't sure if I was crying for my aunt who just passed, or for Afua, or for Nankululeko, or for myself, for this sense of loss and anger that I felt from the system that broke families apart, and what we had to do to better ourselves. There's a wonderful book called Dying to Better Their Lives that was written. I mean, it's a book that I haven't been able to read. I'm down to it's a thick book, but it's a wonderful book. And it's a story about the building of the Panama Canal. Dying to better their lives. And all I could do was cry, because in order to protect us, my great-grandmother, I only grew up with my grandmothers, my great-grandmother, my 2 grandmothers, and my grand aunts, my father's aunts, one of whom played the organ for Marcus Garvey the 12 years he was in Panama organizing. That's the thing we forget. Without internet, you had to go and live in places. Marcus Garvey was in Panama for 12 years, organizing. Okay, that's deep to me, because we get online and we do this, but to go, that's what he had to do. And my father's aunt left Panama at 17. I didn't see her for the first time I saw her was 1969.
Wow.
Aunt Bertie. And my biggest regret was not getting her white stuff she used to parade up and down Harlem with. You know, so families were broken apart, and you go away, you start a new family, and, you know, and now one of the things that I do like about it is that with all the resources we have, I'm able to put things together. I heard little stories here and there, but people didn't want to talk because it was painful for them. And so crying is healing, it's water. Water is life. So I cry. And I've cried a lot these past 2 weeks. I've cried a lot.
I wanted to ask you about the crying, because I too cry. It doesn't mean that I don't fight or that I don't continue, but I allow the tears to come, because like you, I see the value in the dimension of water. And many of us who have been taught in Eurocentric spaces, in a world that is so off balance and leans towards misogyny and things of that nature, consider crying to be a weak thing. They consider crying to be something that you shouldn't do, you know, stifle your sobs and your tears. Don't feel hurt, you know, you got to be tough. In my world, in my way of thinking, if you're so stiff, you will break. You need to have the flexibility. You need to be fluid enough to be able to navigate spaces. And so if you stop feeling, what will you become? If you don't cry, if you don't hurt, what will you become? So that's why I asked you, I mean, you said over the last few weeks you've been crying and you've allowed the tears to come. And for me, that is a huge, huge permission you've just given to so many people who just don't know how to cry, don't want to be seen to be crying, don't want anyone to know that they cry. I mean, what a piece of pressure and burden and weight.
So much, and that's made us sick, because the strong Black woman myth, and the strong Black woman is dead. She's always been dead. It's too much. You've got to be able to let it go. We're human. In Africa, they have wailers. Like when the family can't cry anymore at funerals, you got the wailers coming up and they cry, you know.
Yes.
You know, I love African funerals. Can I tell you? I love African. It's like an all-day affair. It's sad, but it's ritualistic. There are two things that are so important that I learned when I lived there: the celebration when you are born, and the celebration when you are going, ascended. And some of those celebrations we did. I hear the Caribbean in a youth, and you know the 9-night. I'm surprised they don't, you know, the ascension, and the covering up the mirrors because you don't want Duppy come and bite your toe and pull your toe. I know it's
the rituals are what we need. We need to return to the ways
Thank you.
of our ancestors. The ways we've been taught in these Eurocentric schools have sanitized the essence of us away. We have bought into a notion of development that is anything but developmental. It has caused us to be so retarded in terms of our spiritual power, our legitimacy. And the other day, not even the other day, within the last 24 hours, I heard the rage and the power of a certain Sr.Dr. African Queen Mother Warrior, Sr.Dr. ChenziRa. I heard her rage, I felt her power, and I am across the pond. I am miles away, and I heard it. There was no fear. The fear that those of us who buy into a Eurocentric system, you know, we just want to sort of be very kind of, you know, if it's okay, sort of, you know, just like stay on top of it and don't show any emotion.
Of course.
African Queen Mother Warrior Sr.Dr. ChenziRa said, I am not, and I am not, and I am not, and I am, and I am. Just one thing, it was like the spirit of all things were coming through her. I fear not. These were the declarations being made. And we need to return to that.
We do.
Without apology. You know, if my colleagues on the plantation, if the people in the neighborhood, if the ones that came, I declare myself to be, I am I am. I will hurt you. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, Santa was said. She says, if you, the men, you're going to let this guy come and disrespect the stool of the Asanta Henny?
Oh,
Hell no. If y'all wouldn't fight, we, the women with the babies of on our backs, will. And the people need to know that they fought the British for 99 years before them white boys won. They think they won. I mean, to me, that's powerful. And throughout our story, this has been through. Like I tell people, you know, if there were 3 wise women instead of 3 wise men, they would have gotten there before being lost for 3 years. Why? They would have asked questions if they didn't know. They would have arrived on time. They would have cleaned up the darn manger, wherever he was, helped catch the baby, and brought sensible gifts. Okay? Bottom line.
That's the most appropriate. That's the most appropriate narrative. That's a narrative we need to share more of, because most persons don't like to hear that narrative, and it's powerful in a variety of spaces. A lot of the fire, a lot of the power, a lot of the rage is because it's become intolerable. You can only keep doing this over and over and over. You know, couple of centuries, you kind of vex up and, you know, firebomb, little revolution, and people forget. Like when you speak of 99 years of struggle and engagement to endure and sustain power and your sovereignty and your rights, your not just your human rights, not just your quote civil rights, but your inalienable, ancestral, and unalienable rights, those rights that predate their chaos. It's an amazing space to be in, because some persons don't even know anything about those narratives. Most persons have been taught, or more correctly, miseducated to believe, not know, but to be lying in a thought process. That's what belief tends to be, where you do not have the authentic narrative, you do not have the authentic information, you do not listen or value what is coming from our oral ancestral tradition, and it has to be only what the data, whatever dictates. And persons think that because it's researched and it's put in their books, and 4 of them say it at the same time, that makes it valid and accurate, when in actuality, it is really predicated on mistruths that are grounded in genocide, terrorism. I'm going to keep saying that. Genocide.
Thank you.
Terrorism that exploits the very core of our humanity. So that's another reason why we end up having to have certain discourse or have certain engagements like these to be empowered, or more correctly, to restore our empowerment. Because the power exists, and it becomes that we're not only declaring things, because declarations, like treaties, can be overturned. I'm still waiting for the revocation of certain papal bulls from the Vatican that are still in place today, that are still creating power allegiance issues to this day, that make it so that within our ancient ancestral African, Nubian, New Cushian, New Kemetu heritage legacy, that we forget that our very core goes back for millennia upon millennia upon millennia upon millennia upon millennia, and we don't have to ask their permission for nothing. Like nothing. And when we choose to be polite, we can also unchoose.
That's right.
To be polite.
That's exactly right. And people are fascinated. They're fascinated when we assert ourselves and say, enough already.
Enough.
We know how to do that foolishness. It's not saving our lives. We're not doing it anymore. And so we choose to do something else. We choose to do something else. And we are making choices regularly, but maybe we're not always conscious of the fact we have the power to make the choice and act on it. We are tired now.
Yeah.
You know, we are tired of being, you know, demure, polite, waiting our turn. It is killing us.
Mm-hmm.
It is killing us.
Literally. Literally. And at the expense of sounding egocentric, I would like to say that those of us that were captured, we have such a critical role to play, and have done so over the last 400 or 500 years, because we see the continent in such a different way. We are detribalized in some ways. Yeah, we may call ourselves Jamaicans and all this stuff, but basically we are detribalized. And it came to me, it hit me again. I've always said that in looking at this documentary. The Hadza, these are ancient people. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going, I mean, some of the things they were doing, it'll be hard for me to do. I could go there and stay a little while, but it's hard, you know. But I see them as my progenitors. I see them, I see myself. I don't look at them, but our brothers and sisters on the continent look at themselves as Datoga, Sambura. They look at, we are detribalized. That's one of the good things. We were forced. We were forced, and still are in some ways. We were forced to come together to survive. And that detribalization have us look at Africa in a different way. Even when I was there, my first trip there, when my students they were talking about the Chagas versus, you see, I don't see Chagas, I see Africans. I don't see Wolof. I don't see Jolas. I don't see that. I can tell now because I can look at the way they dress, and I understand the importance of their culture and their lifestyles around their existence. But we don't see that. Those of us in the West, we're detribalized. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing because it allows us to see our humanity. Walter Rodney taught me that. And we always forget, yeah, we had these big places, but remember the crystallization of African states. We were taken out of that form of development by colonization. And he talks about that, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, because, you know, we were taken out of our story and became such an integral part of their story that our normal human development has been hampered. And I just have big respect for that guy, because he could have stayed and just been a professor and sit back and be an armchair revolutionary. And Lee left that easy life to go back home, and the CIA and this so-called Pan-Africanist Burnham, who was nothing but a Negro in, you know, and we get caught up in this stuff, Pan-African, that term. He was no Pan-Africanist. He was a murderer and allowed the CIA to murder this brother because this brother was bringing Black and brown people together.
And that's something that's really very connected to what you've shared. That's why, for me, it was important for persons that are watching, that are engaging, learn about the Hadza, learn about what has taken place in Tanzania, which you will also hear say Tanzania.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are comfortable with knowing the point I'd like to get to, because persons like to just think of the 6 days, 6,000 years. This is relatively close to the spot where Homo habilis, one of the earliest hominids, lived 1.9 million years ago. I'm not going to tackle that. I'm just encouraging us to take a moment of reflection when you hear African sistren and brethren bringing certain information together, that we're speaking in terms of our ancestral lineage, traversing for millennia upon millennia upon millennia exponentially. It's really important that we see that. And this particular article is something you can easily, so you can just get a basic understanding of this group, of this ethnic, this family that exists. And the other point that was really critical here, and a lot of persons overlook that, contemporary settlements and farming practices currently threaten the lifestyle of the Hadza. They have lost between 75% and 90% of their land over the past 50 years.
That's what it was. Yes. Oh, girl, teach.
Yes, so it's important that when you were saying that, that we add those bits of information, so that when we're saying development, even when we're saying sustainable development, even if we're saying ecotourism development, whatever that is, that we're bringing this into a space of engagement that allows for us to look at the truth of what is exactly happening to the people that are those part of this ancestral, sacred, traditional legacy that gives us the reason to even speak truth to power in regards to being AfRaKan people, not just African, but the soul and the flesh and the illumination and the power of the Most High. Very different kind of vibe. When we say AfRaKan, we're speaking of the soul and the flesh and the embodiment of all things of the original indigenous ancestral people, not just African, right? Not just African. We need to be really clear when we speak of that. And this is so exciting. We are being joined by Dr. Kevin Mwata Washington. So we're going to take a very quick minute so that we can shift things about. Open this back up to our gallery. I do desire, we've been having such a wonderful reason, and we're going to navigate to those other points that I know you'd like to share. Queen Grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda, and then we're going to welcome our brother, Dr. Kevin Washington, Baba, and Mwata. So we're going to have a moment here. You know, I like that we had this time because it also lets us bring up some word sound power from some of the sistren that we had the joy and privilege. Again, you will be hearing from that 130th Earthlight Celebration, because if you didn't get a chance to see it, you needed to just be there, because it was a very positive upliftment that lent itself to another layer of engagement. So we're gonna share.
I felt the vibe. I felt the
Oh,
vibe.
girl, it was spiritually healing.
That was something.
Sister ChenziRa, you hit it on the end. It's about land, and it's about our own folk allowing other folk to take land, and all these groups of people who have lived the same way they've lived for millions of years are being threatened, and then they go and they take away. It's about land. It's about land and power. That even now, for the first time, the ADSA had to really, because they don't own the land. They don't look at ownership of land the way we do, because their minds are so different. I am just amazed. I'm ready to just be part of the struggle for them.
I'm gonna hold it down because I know you want to bring in a musical interlude.
African Queen of the Warrior.
And I know we have to bring in our brother Doctor.
Be grateful for all the things that you have, because somebody else has it worse than you.
Yes.
It's coming.
Thankful for the things that I have.
Hey!
Humble with the life I possess.
Other night.
Some people try to with much less. No place we can sleep, the people in our midst. Poverty I eat like steel. Time and time them argue about this. Time and time them quarrel about that. Never realize the waiting, never catch. Never satisfied with the teeth of them got. No some girl argue about leave. Round the world in another city.
Woo.
Most little girl have it tougher than she. Trying in the world with the cancer disease. And so you know, you should be grateful. It could have me, it could have you. And so you know, you should live up full today for me, tomorrow you. And so you know, you should be grateful. It could have me, it could have you. And so you know, you should live up full today for me, tomorrow you. Thankful for the things that I have. Humble with the life I possess. To me know some people try it through with much less. The place we go sleep, the picnic I eat. Poverty I eat like steel. When you feel your life is hard, homeless man I say they feel it hard. When you feel your life is hard, Ethiopian still is hard. Complain that the house too small, but I know someone who lose roof and wall. You say that the food not right, when I know someone who never name last night. Clear say they brand know you, no one little you to go to fit the shoes. Free 5-star and first class, when I can't go back, says I'm a live out a cat. Thankful for the things that I have. Humble with the life I possess. Truly know some people try it through with much less. The place we go sleep, the picnic I eat. Poverty I eat like steel.
We're going to pause because we all know that we'll keep listening. It'll be like 15 minutes later. So we just want to
African Queen Mother Warrior. African Queen Mother Warrior. I know whenever we get together, I have some challenges remaining. I just before we bring in our beloved brother Dr. Kevin Baba Mwata, when that was playing and I've heard it over
Mother Nile.
Yes, Mother Nile.
Mother Nile.
the words I thought spoke to what's happening in St. Vincent right now, because there will be time when the pitting are heat.
Yes.
Because we just have to hold on to how more difficult it could be. It could be me. It could have me. It could have you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is real. This is real. This is real.
Yes,
and
sir.
we cannot afford to have the divisions, the false divisions that exist between with one another. We just can't do it.
I am grateful that we have the opportunity to have the links with our sistren and our brethren that are uttering the reality of what we're experiencing, so that we are able to heal in the midst of the chaos. Those words, persons tend to like to sanitize what is happening with us, through us, for us, because it's easier to sanitize it. It's easier to be polite. And I remember during that same broadcast that transpired, and I'll speak to that experience as time permits later, because it's just the fact that there are persons that are not of our African ancestral legacy in its contemporary form. I recognize that all people like to claim, everybody from Africa, et cetera, et cetera. Some persons have come so far removed that they're actually parasitic and antagonistic, and they're hostile to their very own. So it's like you have to be mindful and you have to be protective when we deal with these things, so that we can heal. And that was part of the fire that persons were hearing in the broadcast that myself and the Sr.Dr. were involved in, very graciously on WSTX on Friday. Today, we've been able to cover a number of really powerful areas. I'm so grateful to you, Queen Grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda, for just sharing part of the legacy of your family lineage and what has transpired. And we definitely send prayers, healing, mercies to every member of your family, your extended family, on all of the losses that you have most directly had to endure. That's far beyond anything that we can offer outside of our prayers and our mercies. It's also important that as we engage in these types of versations, these conversations, these life-centered versations, everything that we're speaking to is how do we navigate this into building legacy. We heard we need to humanize birth. We've heard that. And that means we need to support those midwives, the Sangoma, those sistren and brethren that desire to bring forth life in a humanized form. Like now, like that should be the call of the day. It's also a time for us to work very diligently on supporting blessed forms, and I'm going to use this term. We have to get beyond colonialocracy. Dr. Carlisle Corbin's
I like that word.
We have to get beyond the colonialocracy, because persons think that this democratic this and democracy that actually exists, and it really doesn't exist, because it's supposed to be for the people, of the people, by the people. But then the colonial yoke makes it so that it's bent and crooked and twisted and parasitic and antagonistic and genocidal and outright terrorists in form. So persons need to recognize that that's what is happening. Our youth thinking that it's normal and it's okay and nothing will happen to them to kill each other until kill each other is normal. That is part of the outcome of these types of systems and institutions that dismantle our ability to restore our mnemonic system that we have used for millions of years. I'll say it in a polite way. Millennia upon millennia upon millennia, right? So that we are able to restore our building legacy stratagems. We have a lot of them. So what we're asking, in addition to sharing in this broadcast, is for the technique, the strategy, the protocol, the process, the procedure. What are you doing? What are you doing building legacy? Share that with us. Type that in the chat. Type that to us via email. Be a part of this movement that is a matter of our survival. Make sure I say that correctly. This is a movement that is linked to our survival on this planet. This is the planet we got for now. Those that want to go elsewhere, we feel you. And when it works, might travel, might traverse. I'm not gonna ever say never to that, but I'm just saying
never to anything.
Right. So for now, while we there, this is the one that we need to, the environmental awareness.
Warrior, can we relanguage? You know how you've been teaching me how to relanguage? What we are calling polite is not polite. And what is called mainstream should not be our mainstream. We need to relanguage. When we do that kind of sanitizing of it, I don't think that's polite. I think it's deceitful. Let's relanguage that. That is not, it's not the truth. And definitely we need to recall and remember we are custodians. Our young people are killing each other over something that doesn't belong to them.
Ashe. That was clear. That was clear. Now I'm seeing that our guest, Dr. Kevin Washington Baba Mwata, is with us. I give thanks for you to turn on your.
Welcome.
Hey, I'm here.
Okay, you are here.
I was just, I grew up in the South, and I knew that when the women were in the kitchen, you don't say nothing. So
already, I love him.
So I just know how to be quiet.
And his wife and his mother, I love him.
I'm just saying. But what they did know is that I would hide under the table and hear everything. So that's a whole other part of the story. So when it got heated, I would slide back in and hear what they were talking about. But when they gave me that look, that means get out the kitchen. So I'm very clear about what I've been hearing. So I wanted to make sure that I did not step into the wrong space.
We need this brother King to work with our young men.
Especially when that music came on. Sisters, you go into the song of elevation through spirit. Oh, whatever it was, just behave. Shh. because spirit is working. You better get out of that.
I know that's right.
Give thanks, give thanks. So to our viewers, our listeners, as we have expanded our circle for this afternoon's conversation, I'd like to formally share some tidbits, some nuggets, some treasures of our illustrious brethren, our illustrious brother, Dr. Kevin Washington Baba Mwata, who is joining us. And I want to share from a bio that I was kind enough to pull from one of your sites. Inquiry into the human soul is a delicate process, and it is one that requires devotion and a seriousness of purpose on the part of the psychologist, healer, Dr. Kevin Washington. Mwata Kahina is an African-centered psychologist licensed in Florida and Washington, D.C., engaged in the inquiry to the human soul. He has taught and lectured at several colleges nationally and internationally. Roland Martin, as well as Essence Magazine, Black Entertainment Television News, Vocal Point, NBC Universal, and many other national and international organizations. He is a past president of the Association of Black Psychologists, as well as the former dean pastor of the Imani Temple Cathedral. Currently, he is an associate professor and head of the sociology and psychology program at Grambling State University. GSU! Just have to add that. I know who I have to cover.
That was it.
No, is the national director of Black Marriage Day. As a Fulbright Hayes Scholar, Dr. Washington Baba Mwata researched the impact of socializing institutions on the healing or restructuring of post-apartheid South Africa, Azania. It was in Azania where he researched Ubuntu and how it can inform mental health service delivery to people of African ancestry and others. Not only does he work on healing the psycho-spiritual wounds that are present within people as a result of cultural and historical trauma, he continues developing healing paradigms for persons of African ancestry who have been impacted by persistent enslavement systemic trauma, PEST, P-E-S-T. This work is critical to his advancing of Ubuntu psychology and psychotherapy. He is the founder of Ubuntu Psychotherapy and Black Love Coaching. As the founder of Ubuntu Psychotherapy Psychology, he advances a culturally sensitive modality for mental health counseling and psychotherapy for Black men and boys, as well as Black African families. He advances culturally relevant trauma-informed care and interventions to be utilized by psychotherapists that is culturally inclusive and particularized concomitantly. Through his research and writing, he seeks to assist people to live life with power, purpose, and passion. So let us welcome our beloved, illustrious King brother, King man, King Royal One. Gotta make sure I get all of that in there. Dr. Kevin Washington Baba and Mwata.
Hey. Hey.
Hey,
All right. That's what I'm talking about. I can go out the room and come back in again to that. So thank you all so much for allowing us to be here. Yes, thank you. You got something on your mind. I don't want to jump in. I just want to.
No, well, you can, because there's a number of areas that in your sharing, and as we have been reasoning, a lot of what we've been talking about today has shared that trajectory of the layers of trauma. Yes, without us using the term trauma per se, to talk about some of these genocidal effects and the terrorism that our people have been subjected to. And while we speak of that, we're always layering it with, and what are we doing to build legacy? And what are the things that we can begin to unfurl and uncover so that we can build legacy, whether it's in education, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in jurisprudence, whether it's in ecotourism, development, process, education, all of that. So whatever you desire to share in that regard on how your work facilitates us and provides some examples of how we can build legacy, we really would welcome that.
So thank you so much, sisters, for allowing me to be here, queens, to share in this timely conversation. And we know that who we are as any individual come out of the womb, and so this becomes one of those womb moments to birth a new reality. So thank you all so much for having this space for the birthing of something better than it has been. The reason why we talk about pest, persistent enslavement, systemic trauma, is because we misappropriate the construct. We try to utilize European nomenclature to describe African phenomena. So we talk about the issue of post PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so Dr. George DeGruy did a piece, or George DeGruy did a piece on post-traumatic slave syndrome. And the issue is that we're not in a post moment. See, when you're in perpetual war, when the enemy has identified you as its enemy and it's always attacking you, then you can't be in a post moment. And so we use the European nomenclature to try to describe our situation, and it's going to be a miss every time. Yes. And so we call it then persistent because it is ongoing, and it is to remind us of this idea that we have an open enemy. The other thing is that it's based on the ideology of enslavement. By that, we're saying that the ideology suggested that Europeans or whites were superior to others, and so as a result, they could oppress, they could human traffic other people. So we even use the language about the slave trade. First of all, as we know here, our ancestors were not slaves; they were enslaved, right? They were Africans. They were people who had a lifestyle. This is part of the legacy, right? The reclamation of that legacy. So they disrupted that. So we talk about a trade like a swapping. When you trade, generally people who engage in a trade have a mutual benefit from the process. There's no benefit that has occurred to African people based on the European incursion. So it wasn't a trade. So the enslavement experience was that. So that's persistent, is ongoing. Enslavement, the ideology. Systemic is that this ideology runs through every aspect of our being. So you mentioned law, the idea of how we are incarcerated at high rates, the idea of health care, the notion that we do not have adequate health care within the U.S. because of a variety of factors. As a matter of fact, a student just did a presentation trying to finish getting for our final presentation about Lewis Terman and the testing process. And so the human betterment movement was about sterilizing people who they felt were inferior, and generally they felt that people who were of African descent were inferior, were dull, based on their testing processes. So we've been attacked in hospitals, healthcare, law, education. The idea of receiving information, IN means within, form, shape, Asian process of. So our internal being has been transformed to identify with the alien as if it were us. Dr. Wade Nobles tells us this story very clearly, that you make a sheepdog by making it suckle at the breast of a sheep, that it grows up thinking that it is a sheep, and it will use all of its dog instincts to protect the safety and sanctity of those sheep. You can put another dog in the pen with it, it will attack and kill it. If you take its own mother and put it in the pen with it, it will attack and kill her. But the worst part about it is that if you take a mirror and put it in front of it, it will attack its own image in the mirror because it believes that that's its enemy. And so we have begun to believe, based on what we have been indoctrinated to understand about who we are, that we are our enemy. In reality, we haven't identified the attacks. And so this is the disruption of our legacy building. But the reality is that the dynamics of the legacy have never been broken. Notice I said disruption. It still is continual. And so there are those who are the keepers of that legacy, those who are able to identify, those whose spirit have identified as the purveyors of that legacy. And they have never been allowed to go to sleep, and they keep being born. And so that's you all on this line right now, the ones who can see among the blind. And so it is, that's why we talk about pest and trauma as, again, a disruption, not the idea of the physical body of being, but with an African cosmological understanding. We know that spirit is essential and all things move via spirit. So we're talking about a spiritual disruption. And so when we start using vibratory frequency words that are dehumanizing towards us, and we identify with those words, then we know that our spirits have been disrupted. And so we talk then about identifying the phenomena, the thing And then we talk about the healing and repair. You can't go to a doctor and say, I don't feel well, without identifying where you don't feel well, what's hurting, what's, is your head, is your back. You got to be specific about here's what's going on. And so we are clear that it is a spiritual disruption that has occurred and that we are looking to repair. And I want to understand this, that in therapy is like a cast to an arm. It provides the structure. The cast provides the structure for the bone to mend. But if the therapist does not have knowledge of the original formation of the spirit, then there's going to be some deformation, deformity happening with because there is a lack of understanding of the original form of the soul and our spirit. And so that's why we talk about African-centered healing practices. And so that's where we are.
As you could tell, a number of
He's
commentaries.
speaking truth. He is speaking truth. He hit it right on.
Can't even form a sentence.
Look, slave trade, you were enslaved, captured, okay? Let's get it right.
The power of language. The power of language. That's another reason.
I have been saying I think people were going to certify me, pathologize. Something's wrong with Sister Doctor. I said what I said. Like, first of all, there is no post and there is no neo because the things are still happening.
Yes.
Okay? And the other thing is, what does this thing called forgiveness? You only forgive people who are sorry and they stop. These people ain't sorry and they haven't stopped. What is this thing called forgiveness? I know I was raised in the church, but what is this thing? You want me to turn the other cheek so they can lick my entire head off? No, I can't sleep properly because I got to keep one eye open. They're murdering my children and telling me it's not happening.
Yeah.
Like, we are sending our children back to the same place, knowing that that place is damaging our children. What? They are doing what they came here to do. Why don't we do what we came here to do? I can live without them. I don't need them in my world, So I love Sister Queen, Joy DeGray Leary, but I've been saying, no, something wrong with it. I understand what we have to do for our PhDs and stuff, but there's something wrong with that. We're not in the post.
I love it. That's why I don't have a PhD till now, because I don't want a group of them to sit down and certify my knowledge. I keep getting a lot of masters. I don't have to sit before them. But that said, what you just said is very powerful. And it smacks at our humanity. When most of the world now is being born via surgery, 80% of the births almost in China are through surgery. It's been that way from the 90s in Brazil, because we get it confused between being born and being delivered or being delivered of. I tell women they can do three things. They can be delivered of, they can deliver, or they can give birth. When you give birth, you give birth in a humanized environment, you are creating another space on the planet for love, agape love, to take place. When you are delivered of, it can be either through a section, and there are times in about 2 to 3% of the births where that's needed. But not 80%, not 30-something%. Causes too much separation and doubt, because you are birthing two people. You are not birthing a child. You are birthing a competent, strong mother. That's not going to tolerate a lot of stuff. I think that's why, when I hear this stuff now and I see people are saying things are changing, it reminds me of the 50s and the 60s. I remember when Jamaica and I remember when Ghana had its independence, so-called independence in 58. I remember what happened in the 70s after the Black liberation movement. And now we're seeing it happening again. And everyone is saying, oh, Lord, we're moving forward, everybody. I'm still waiting. Thank you, brother man.
You know, can I just jump in? I'm sorry. Listen, illustrious, precious, beloved African Queen Mother Warrior, Sr.Dr. ChenziRa. If I need to pause, please send me a little message. Let me know I need to pause. But first of all, Brother King, Dr. Kevin Mwata, give thanks for that presentation. Give thanks for the sharing that you just did in a very clear, kingly, firm, unapologetic way. I give thanks for that. I hope this is not the last time I see you or hear you, because there's a whole audience of people who need to hear you. There are Africans walking around who don't have a clue about none of this stuff. They don't understand why the people keep killing us. In fact, I'm in audiences and I say, but why are they doing that? But why are they doing that? Like, okay, I have a question. So we have with us Queen Mama Sangoma, and her works, much of her works have been about birthing. And I have a question about the transition, about when we have been here, spirits having an earth experience, and then we come to the time when we will transition after living. Sometimes it's a miserable experience and existence within a paradigm that has never sat well with our spirit. We've never fully understand why it is we don't, never recognizing that we have been captured psychologically because we went to schools and we went to employment with people who don't like us and see us as less than human, and then we have children, and then we're ashamed and we don't cry and we don't tell them, and so they don't know. On the inside there's something going on, but we don't actually tell them because we want to be deceitful, well, commonly known as polite. And then we come to the end of our years, and then we're going to make a transition in a climate that is COVID infested, where you can't have African ritual, you can't be present, you can't. What would you say? Because for me, this is part of a new trauma that's happening, that after a life of hell, we now can't even be present. And when we are present, the people who are throwing earth on our mortal remains are the people who gave us hell when we were living. So what we actually witness now as African people is European people covering us with the earth. I have been waiting for someone to tell me, what can I say to the audiences that I find myself in front of who are speaking to this trauma? You can't go to the hospital with them. You can't have more than 10 people at the funeral. You can't wail. And Queen Mama Sangoma was talking about our rituals where we wail. We have this primordial, we emit a sound when this is happening. We are not supposed to do that anymore. What? Just what, please? What?
Powerful. Yeah. So, Mama Sangoma, what you said about birthing and the process and the connection of that, who's being birthed is phenomenal because we begin to see that, again, spirit energy. I talk about Ubuntu psychotherapy. That's what I practice. That's my therapy. So that comes out of South Africa. So I've studied with some Sangomas in South Africa as well as some Nyangas. And so watching and observing the process of understanding humanity. And so what I suggest, or what comes to me about this COVID moment, is that it allows us to be able to focus on what really is important. I think too often, too much, we have been dealing with window dressing activities. And I'm not saying rituals window dressing. I'm simply saying that the things that we thought were important within the European context were important. So now we're able to see that ritual, and among the Zulu is called umzebezi. The idea of doing proper ritual is there, and we can see the significance of it. And then we're able to return back to it because we know that it is us, right? We have learned that somehow that the proper ritual for releasing is somehow backwards, but in reality, it is the spirit, because there's a wail that takes place to bring a child into existence. So it would have to be the same process to go and transition to, because spirit is moving through a space, right? And so we acknowledge that these rituals are significant. And I don't think that we understood their significance. It's almost as saying that you don't miss me until I'm gone, right? You don't understand my value that I have in your life. This is ritual. This is the work. And so the healing work then is, how do we get back to connection? So Ubuntu talks about how we are connected in all things. Everything is working together, that no matter what you do in your space, it impacts me in my space. The idea here is that even though I cannot be with the persons in their body, we have to come together as those who are family in spirit. See, because just simply being it doesn't, this is even good too, right? I can be somewhere physically, but not there in spirit. You understand? So just because I'm present doesn't mean that I'm available. And so the idea is that this is forcing us to be present and available in a very distinct way. That is that though I can't be with the body in a certain way, I'm able to release and connect in spirit. And I know that I have to trust in faith that the spirit energy is moving forward and is facilitating the healing process, the deliverance process, the transitioning process in the way that it was intended to be, rather than simply being there as a circus, as a window dressing. Are you understanding? Because we do a lot of window dressing. We just show up for the event. We show up, but we're not present and available. Right. And so I think that this is that call for those who understand to be able to bring to bear the voice and the voices of the Abapanzi. You mentioned the soil. Among the Zulu, our ancestors is Abapanzi, which literally translates into being our soil. So the dirt you mentioned is the reclamation of spirit back to ancestral realm, right? The concept, right? You said it all. So I don't need to be there for that to happen, because ritual has to happen within me first. Stick with me, Sister Doctor.
I'm with you.
Too often we think ritual is something that we've done outside, but have we done proper ritual inside? Right? Are we, if we say then that we are spirits having a human experience, then the kingdom of the divine is within. Then wherever you find the kingdom or the queendom, that's where you find it. So the king is inside, the queen is inside. We trying to do it outside. So this thing made us stop and be, as opposed to do. Right? Because we spend a lot of time doing. And we do stuff, and we talk about Dr. ChenziRa. We talk about the issue of domestic violence increasing during COVID-19 because people don't know how to be together. You know, when you have children, you do. The children have to come in. You got to get the child to the prices. You got to feed the child. You got to get to bed. Right, get homework done. You're doing. Even when you meet somebody, you date them, you go somewhere, you do. What are we going to do today? But you can't do but for so long, then you have to be. Now I have to be with you. And that be is a spirit moment. Because as long as I'm doing, I'm never stopping to be. And now I need to be in vibration with you, in harmony with you. But I can't because I'm not in vibration and harmony with myself because I'm not even aware of who I am. So now I'm sick and tired of you, not because it's you, but because I'm tired of me because I don't even know who I am.
Exactly.
So now we get back to honoring the divine that's within. That birthing, the journey, the transition is our true essence. And this COVID moment has caused us to stop, many of us to stop, and figure out what is really important.
Thanks. Give thanks for that, Brother King. I got to make a statement here. African Queen Mother Warrior, Sr.Dr. ChenziRa, I love you.
Oh, I do too. And let me tell you, her works are not respected enough here in St. Croix. Yes, I said it for you Crucians that are listening, because there's too much jealousy upon us. I honor her. I respect her. I am not just talking as a visitor. I have been here come September 7 years. And she does not get the kudos she deserves for the tireless work she does in telling our stories. So let me say it here. I love her. And brother man, I'm gonna say this to you. When people hire me and they want to know what do, I said I'm very good at doing nothing. I'm very good at just being there and then observing. I'm very good at doing nothing. Because babies are gonna come whether I'm there or not. I just have to trust the process. I'm able to see those kinks in the process that are really serious and those that are not. Most of them aren't. You just have to weather the storm and trust the process.
Give thanks. That's part of the reason. Give thanks for that prayerful support, because I receive it, and I receive it in a prayerful space, because when you hold this space, it's a shared space. So it's only because of sistren and brethren that are right here in this conversation right now, and others, our families that support this work, that we could even share and speak and have life-centered conversations like this, and always move it in the vibration of legacy building, nation building to some, upliftment, empowerment, strengthening. Because if we're present, authentic presence automatically demands work and balance. And that allows for us to embrace those principles that are linked to Ubuntu, that allows us to embrace the importance around the principles of birthing, because there's a birthing that's happening with each and every one of us, especially right now, like right now, to undo this chaotic genocidal terrorism that's manifesting around us. It requires that we hold such a firm space and that we restore those ancestral principles. I'll use Ma'at as one of them. That's one of them, because it is going to be truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony. That's going to facilitate our ability to do some more and to go beyond that weariness that is shoved down on our throats and kind of clamped down on our crowns and interfering with some of the things that we're doing in our day jobs, as well as what we're doing for people that are our people that may not really understand that they are our people, and that what we're doing is for the greatest and highest good, because a lot of persons just don't know. And they're like, well, how can you know and I don't know?
That's right.
Right.
And they start kicking out against you and you start becoming the enemy. Like, you know, I'm going to keep loving you and I'm going to keep loving myself, because I know we are going through something. We are in trauma. We are in trauma and we are healing. So you fighting against me because you don't know who I am. That's why are you fighting against me? You don't know who you are. So let's find a therapist who can help us to understand what has happened to us and how we can recover. Brother King, I am so humbled and so grateful for your wisdom and your energy. You enter this space in a very wise, measured way.
Yes.
You enter this space in a way that allows for the hearing and the receiving and the absorbing of a truth. There is no separation. There is no separation. All of these divisions are outwardly imposed, and we have bought into some things we should never have bought into.
Absolutely.
Our children need to hear from us. They are asking questions about what have we done? So you OGs, or that generation, what have you done? Because we're out here marching on the streets. We're out here doing Black Lives Matter. We're out here with fire. We're going to show everybody what needs to be done. Not really maybe fully getting that this is legacy building. You are part
Of a movement.
of a movement. You are not the beginning of the movement, but we need to have a space where they can hear us, and where some of us who are angry, Pan-African, whatever, fighting against whoever is in proximity, and often it's us fighting each other. The ego is just got control now. We are really missing the opportunity to, number one, have our children recognize that they are part of a movement, that on shoulders they stand, and there's some revelations that were not made to them within a Eurocentric schooling system. But also, increasingly, this is coming to my attention, our elders, as they prepare to make their transition, need to be acknowledged or aware that the time that they gave in the movement and whatever was not lost. It's just that somehow in the middle, maybe there's a slight fracture or a slight disconnect, and we need to return to something, because there's no separation. There's no separation. And it would be good to hear from both our divine Queen Mama Sangoma Makeda and our divine brother King Baba Mwata, your thoughts on this, because there are populations that are, especially now, they are spending time on Zoom or in rooms or whatever, where this is a great opportunity to give a new paradigm, a new understanding, or even offer some balm, some healing. What say you both?
I want to thank Brother King. He brought up something that's extremely important and not spoken about. We don't know how to be with our children and with each other. And COVID forces yourself. That's the benefit that our brothers and sisters on the continent have. They have phones. They just don't use it the way we do. Everything is more social. And here we are being forced to do it. It hurts my heart. Last year, was it year before here, the teachers were protesting the conditions in the schools, the lack of supplies and stuff like that. And you could count maybe how many parents showed up. Very few parents showed up for that. And one of the biggest cries is that we have to get our children back in classrooms, because everyone is going bunkers because they have to be with their children. And I have to insert this because that we don't know how to be with our children. We don't know how to be still with each other. And one of the things I hear from grandmothers, not Mama ChenziRa, of course, what is that she has to get back to work. She can't breastfeed. We got to give the baby a bottle. The baby is, one mother came into me the other day. She came, I like to see them close together. And I must say this, I felt comfortable because Sister ChenziRa and Brother Kara, I know that they know the way, and that their daughter was taken care of. But she said to me, I said, "You're not breastfeeding anymore?" She says, "No, the baby wasn't getting enough." And her mother felt that she had to give the baby a bottle because the baby was being held too much. We are told that you hold the baby too much, you spoil the baby. All this comes from our enslavement. And so we are the only so-called developed country that does not pay families or women for the breastfeeding work that they do and the child rearing work, or create a space where that can happen. Norway gives them 18 months, and the father gets a certain amount of months, anywhere from 3 to 6. Sweden does 16 months, because they understand that if this nucleus gets healthy, this family gets healthy. They did a study in 1970. They would save $10 billion a year in hospital emergency visits and childhood diseases. It's already been studied, but the first thing, and then we come from an enslaved past where, yes, we breastfed because there was no formula, which comes from another discussion, because you had to spend daily visits to a chemist to redo that formula, because babies, when that was introduced, were considered very sick babies. They were sickly babies. So you constantly, the rich women that could afford it were in the chemist's office to have the formula change 5-6 times a day. But our ancestors developed here in the Caribbean and Panama and other places the use of what became known as pap water, whether it was made from green figs, whether it was made from cornmeal, because we didn't have that opportunity because we had to feed masses babies. So there's a strong disconnect. Kimberly Allers wrote it in Black women even today about breastfeeding. And most of the pressure against mothers who are trying it is that their mothers and their grandmothers telling them, well, you have to get back to work, as if raising our children is not work because it's not paid labor. So how do we as a society make these demands so that that can take place? I remember when we moved to Benin Republic, which is considered, what do they call it? What's the word they use, brother Mwata, about pagan? Because 80% of the people there are what you, they're not as civilized as other countries. They practice voodoo, which people think it's people sticking needles and all this other kind of stuff into you. And they have Yoruba. It's a very traditional society, even, so when we moved there, at first I said, oh God, this is definitely not the Senegal. But it was one of the best moves in the world that I've ever done, because it allowed me to live 30 years ago, almost 35, because my daughter is 35 now, into a very traditional African society. It's very different, who practice these rituals, these ways of carrying on societal norms and culture through the things that they did every day, how they welcome their children, the things that you do after you have your children, how you celebrate life after it's gone. It's considered a poor country, which it isn't. It's very rich in culture. And it's considered an animist. That's the word I was looking for, an animistic society, because they don't practice, they're not Islamic. They have some Muslims, but the majority of the religion are African religions. And it is a very fascinating place. I learned a whole lot. I learned a lot about myself. I like when I learn, and I became a better person. And it was one of the better places I lived in terms of being able to focus on, you think you're African, you got to focus on this. It was very hard, but it was some of the best years of the time that I spent on the continent. Only now to find out that I have some origins in Benin Republic. I mean, my sister paid white folks to find that out, the ancestry.com. I haven't done that because I just don't want to pay somebody to tell me about my ancestry that I don't, but that's another story. But I learned a whole lot there. And I think that it's not a place that's visited much, but it ought to be. Because it's very interesting. And I learned about the Fang. I love things about them, and there's certain things that I didn't like. And the Dahomey warrior queens, I learned things about them that I love, but there were other things that I liked. I learned about the people, Africa Venice, the people that live in Ganvier villages who were running from the Fang. But it was the rituals that are so important, the rituals and the ways of being. I like that I learned in that culture that really impacted my life. They didn't even give me permission to name my daughter what I wanted to learn. They said, you got to give her a different kind of name. And it was when I really understood that you get 2 or 3 names. You get a name that tells about the day you were born, that tells the day, it identifies, because there's not the date as much as the day. She was born on Saturday. That's what her name means, girl born on Saturday. Then she was given a name that only she, her father, and I know, so that no one can call her name and do her harm. That's her protective name. Then I was able to give her another name, so that she has a name that only her father, she, and I know, not even her brother knows. That's her name. That's her direct connection to the Most High. That's her name. And even though we were practicing what we thought was African culture with her brother, who is now 41, we named him a name. And I had wanted to name her, because she was born, in 86, after one of my Den Shiros, Nomzamo, Winnie Mandela. And so that's also one of her names. But her real name is her name that she, her father, and I, and Spirit knows.
Hmm.
Powerful. Powerful. And as I knew this was going to happen, it's really powerful to have this opportunity to know how 2 hours can just
Uh-oh.
Wonderful exchange. Everyone's sharing. I'm like, I had to kind of pause and say, we're going to go a little bit over with everyone's permission, so that everyone can share that word, sound, power, and strength that we could bring to the wider audience. So I ask that most humbly of everyone.
African King, Brother Warrior, before you come in, Brother King, this is only part 1. We're going to have to do this. We need a part 2.
Yes.
We need a part 2. Brother King, sorry.
Several things jumping off, and I know that the time is upon us. The African Ancestry.com, Mama Sangoma, until April 16th, you put in Power 21, a code, you get a 10% discount on the kit, and you can do, of course, the matrilineal, which is different from Ancestry.com. African Ancestors is a Black-owned company that traces. It's in the chat. It's called AfricanAncestry.com, not Ancestry. AfricanAncestry.com, 10% discount. Something we did with the organization last week for my wife's retirement, and so it's powerful. We talk about the connection that we must make with who we are. So Power 21 is the code you put in, and you get a 10% discount just on the strength of doing the work.
Okay.
You said something that was several things that were so important, and Sister Doctor, of course, you bring in such the it's like, I don't know, angels. It's like whatever it is that they always with. Whenever you say something, it's like I feel it. I feel what you're saying before I even hear what you're saying. So, Sister Doctor, thank you so much. You said, Mama Sangoma, that Europeans had our mothers to be wet nurses for their children, and yet. I'm just kind of pulling something together here. And yet we follow them as the model for adulting in the world. But if they are disconnected from their own children and we follow them as the model, thus that leads to our disconnection. And so what you mentioned was something very powerful, which says that we must stop following them as an example of how to do the work, but acknowledge the fact that they know who we are, which is why they made their children suckle at the breast of the true God, right? So we got to catch this, because we're missing on something, because we're not catching what we're seeing, right? And so we think that by parenting, and we have our children to come out of the womb and they have to have their own space. This idea of rugged individualism is by virtue of word, but not by virtue of action, right? And so children were created in most conditions when they wanted, but children are created with people coming together, touching one another. And the child grows in the womb in something, and all of a sudden it comes out of the womb, and you want it to be over someplace else, away from me, in its own space, which defies the idea of humanity, right? So humans don't do that. Aliens may do that, right? Whatever those aliens are, right? And that's, and what you said, Sister Doctor, earlier about I don't want to be around them. The question is, what are they? Right? Because they don't demonstrate what we understand as humanity. That's why you can be without them. Right? When I was studying the concepts among Zulu, and one is called Ukufa Kwabantu, which means metaphysical illnesses of the people. And so I asked the question of the AfRaKa, can everybody get this? He says everybody can get these. So I asked later, a sister who was closer, I said, so can Afrikaners have Ukufa Kwabantu? She says, no, you have to be human to have these disorders, right? And so the idea is that when we understand what it means to be human, right, and we live inside of that, then it transforms all of our relationships.
Yes, I.
And so we can't follow them in their disconnect. That's why we talk about Ubuntu. We have to follow the issue of understanding who we are from our connection. Who are we? They know that we are God on earth. They know that we are divine.
That's right.
They know that we are sacred.
Yes.
We don't know that.
No.
So we see one another as being crazy, as being backwards. Now, that doesn't mean that we're perfect. That's not the point. The point is that we are sacred.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the word Zulu means people of the heavens. So they recognize where they come from, right? And so you all have been saying king, and you can't be a king. In a way, I won't go there right now. But the idea is that you got to be divine to have this honor. And so when we live inside of that, right? And you mentioned earlier, Sister Doctor, about forgiveness, and I want to be clear about seeing forgiveness. Right. I think too often we tie forgiveness with letting people get off the hook. The idea of forgiveness means that I go beyond giving it opportunity to take over my life. I want to be clear about this. I'm moving beyond the fact that this thing is eating me. People die more from what's eating them than from what they're eating. Is that making sense? I disallow what you have done to destroy me and my divinity on the inside. You understand?
That's right.
I'll say it this way: your madness will not become a part of my reality. It's not a part of me, right? Because I'm going into a season of my life that I refuse to carry your stuff with me. And now all of a sudden you want to get upset. See, you know what, when you can't get anybody to date you at some point, right? And all of a sudden somebody finds you interesting and everybody wants to get with you. But then you see the person that kind of wanted to you show them some attention, but then you say, no, I'm leaving. They want to know, well, what's wrong? The point is that when we begin to leave the oppressor, they want to know all of a sudden what's wrong. I don't need you. I don't need your drum. I don't need what you have, right? You needed me. I didn't need you. So when we begin to step into our own divinity and separate ourselves out, they will become more anxious. They will go into a Capitol building and start taking over. They will put their knee on the neck. They will start shooting and killing because they recognize that a population is saying that I do not need you. You need me. Right? So this is the idea of forgiveness, is that I am moving beyond the hold that I'm allowing you to have in my life. When I talk about pest, the pest is not about understanding how they have wronged me. The pest is understanding about how I'm allowing myself to be wronged by their ideology. And I'm releasing that hold on me because I come from something better than that. That's the legacy that you all are talking about. When you have a legacy, you say that I am better than that stuff. I almost cursed on that one, but I'm better than that. And I thank you all for honoring the fact that we don't come from a legacy of slaves, of mammies, of uncles, of pickaninnies, of bootlicking, scratching people. We come from people who are sacred and divine. They are kingly and queenly. They are royalty. And when you are royal, you have wealth and you understand where the wealth lies. The greatest wealth lies between your two ears, not in the earth. It lies right in how you conceptualize the reality around you. Right. But they know our wealth. As a matter of fact, not only do they use our women as wet nurses and our men for their own laboring process, right? But they use the cocoa from Ghana to build chocolate empires. They've used the gold to be the crown jewel in the UK. They use our teas to be their morning sipping rituals. They don't have gold. They don't have cocoa, nor do they have the leaves to make the tea. But it's the essence of who they are. But it is not their stuff. It is our stuff. They use the coltan, the tantalite inside the computers and the cell phones that primarily come out of the Congo region to make the computers, because the metal is the highest conducting metal known to man. But if you understand that the metal comes out of the earth, that as the body decomposes into the earth, it becomes the metal that is known as coltan and tantalite. That means that the highest conducting metal on earth is right here.
Yes.
You know that, right? And so this is the thing we have to acknowledge. And when we walk in that power, we can transform healthcare. We can transform education. We can transform legal systems, but we keep using them as the model and we're disconnected.
Thank you.
And they are not the model to follow. I know that. You know that. Let's get everybody else woke so they can know that too.
Wow.
I'm very excited.
So
excited. African Queen Mother Warrior, bring this situation under control before it goes on to tomorrow.
I am giving thanks that so many components have been shared. We are very honored to have had such illustrious, regal, exceptional scholarship, knowledge, wise counsel, eldership
Oh, wow.
in its highest manifestation.
Give
To
thanks.
have truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony restored in such a short amount of time. We could have easily had this conversation continue for days with those practical resolutions. And so we're very humbled, very honored to have Queen Grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda share with us, along with our illustrious brother, King Dr. Kevin Washington, Baba Mwata, sharing all of that skill, talent, and expertise on a layer that authentically allows us to restore balance and restore harmony and build legacy at the same time. And anyone that has any inquiries, any desires to continue this type of conversation, there will be a part 2. And we're going to navigate respectfully everyone's schedules to make sure that we can do this at a very soon time. So the questions that are being raised, things that persons are putting in chat can also come forward. I'm also very grateful to my illustrious co-host, who is able to keep it alive.
Yes.
Sister Dr. SandRa, because we were able to get clarity doing this work, as African Queen Mother Warriors, moving this conversation forward. It's been a powerful sharing. Please begin to close us out, Sister Doctor.
May I say something? May I ask Dr.
Of
King
course.
one more question?
Of course.
It bothers me. I mean, just yesterday at a visit, I almost went ballistic. And someone told me that I'm taking it out of context, that we are taking over the word and giving it new meaning. I said, no, I am not going to allow that. I don't like anybody to be called a dog, and I don't like to use the B word. And if you're going to use that to describe another woman, you cannot do it in my space.
Ashe.
So
that's when you that's when you get to the kick down. See, it's just from being polite and lovely. And what did you say we are? You said if we're too polite, we're being deceitful. So we're not going to be deceitful. We don't want to disrespect.
Just another woman in my space in that way. I don't care what it is between you and her.
Okay, Queens.
So please, Dr. Kidd.
Yeah.
Well, so you see, I changed my background so I can be right. You see what I did, right? I saw what we were doing. So if we're gonna transcend this space, we're gonna go ethereal. Let's take it up. So I want to make sure I was consistent.
I see.
I want to.
Mama Sangoma into alignment.
I don't know how to do it. I'm computer illiterate.
And I'm just
no, you are not. You are very literate. We're gonna just add that.
We're gonna
to
take care of that for the next time. You're not left out.
I want to
be silent to receive the words from Brother King. You just gotta. Okay.
I want to join in. So the part of the oppressor's functionality is to create a condition by which we see ourselves as less than human, as animals. And so we utilize dehumanizing terminology to describe the highest order of our relationships. So a bitch is a female dog. So we can say bitch. I use it all the time in class because that's a female dog. And so if I call my friend, my dog, by default, I call his mother a bitch, right? So these are terminologies that we get into, and it benefits them. We are the only people that utilize dehumanizing terminology to describe the highest order of our relationships, because we've bought into the fact that we bought into their belief that we are not human. And so we use terms that are infantile, so we never grow up. So we go back to cribs. All right, babies reside in cribs, and so we have my boy. We don't have men. The movie was coming out, was going to be called White Boys Can't Jump, and white men got together and said we may not be able to jump, but we will not be called boys. And so it was called White Men Can't Jump. Yes. But around the same time, a movie came out called Boys in the Hood. So we allow ourselves to exist in a space of infantilism, of of dehumanization and marginalization. And so we have to recognize to talk about the issue of the minority, right? That's marginalization. So when we recognize that we're using the terms to erase ourselves out of existence, and that means that we got to stop using their ideology to describe us. We will never be anybody else's nigga, bitch, or hoe, right? And these are terms. And again, I throw this out in class all the time. People say, well, "Are you cursing?" No, I'm not cursing. This is, first of all, you all said nigga is a derogatory form of the word. Nigga is an Africanized word term. Nigger. Nigger comes from the word negro. Negro comes from the Spanish word negra. Negra comes from the Portuguese word necro. Necro means death. So what do niggas do? So we make the link so they can understand that it's a term of death.
Yes.
Right. And just as the dehumanization is there, so we buy into our dehumanization. So you are correct. Even in my presence, my friends don't know not to use nigga or boy. That's my boy. I'm not your boy. Right. And I'm not your nigga, because that's a whole nother piece.
Mm-hmm.
But I can be your brother, because there's certain things that you can do to a nigga that you can't do to your brother.
Yes.
So they can't be interchangeable terms, right? To my sister, I can do certain things to a bitch, a female dog, but not to my sister, because so therefore they can't be interchangeable. Which means we know that they're not in alignment with our spirit.
Thank you.
So there's spiritual vibrations that we have to resonate with. Folks say, well, it's not, it doesn't really matter. Well, if it doesn't matter about the words, I tell students all the time, I say, well, I should be able to walk out on campus and say, hey, bitch, you coming to class today? And everything will be cool. But they say, and I say, if I said that, I'd be walked off campus. I'd be run off campus. Why? Because the words have meaning.
Meaning, yes.
Don't treat it like it doesn't have meaning. It has meaning. And what do you own today? And I'll say this last one. One day, a young student came to class just last semester, had "bye bitch" on her cap, and I stopped the class right there. So what are we doing today? Yeah, and had this whole conversation. The cap never came back to class anymore, right? But the point is that we have to recognize what it is that we represent in the world. And this is why you all are so important, because you all gave title to my entering into this space. You give title to one another, and you have to, and you all give title to the ones that you come in, that you interact with, and you let them know that you're royalty. That's what we're not hearing. And that's why this is important. This is why when I said in the beginning, this is the rebirth of the divine, through understanding that you are a purveyor of a profound legacy. And that's what you do when you're royal. So thank you.
Give thanks.
Give thanks. Give thanks. Yes, Sister Queen. Yes, Sister Doctor.
Warrior. I echo the acknowledgements and the absolute divine gifts of having as our guests these powerful African people to bring wisdom and to bring healing to our ankhversation. This session, I certainly will be promoting and reposting and sharing and calling people in. I will be doing that because so much wisdom was shared. And so I won't even attempt to do what you do so well, but what I do need to do is to just once again remind everyone that you are an African Queen Mother warrior.
Yes, I.
Dr. ChenziRa.
I love her.
It's already been said that your works are not properly acknowledged by ones who know who you are. They know who you are. And it is an honor to continue to walk alongside you as we share the importance of building legacy. And I give thanks for your works. I give thanks for the works and wisdom of our guests and our listeners. I invite them to join us again sometime real soon so we can continue to build on the legacy that we have been left by our ancestors and that we are going to leave for our children to come.
Yes, sir. Ashe.
Blessings. Give thanks for all of the support. Remember, Building Legacy is a broadcast that is every second and fourth Saturday from 3 to 5 Eastern, 7 to 9 UK. And we really encourage you to share your reflections, your comments, etc. We've had an illustrious conversation with our Queen grandmother, Mama Sangoma Makeda. We're very grateful. We've also been joined by a powerful king brother amongst us, Dr. Kevin Washington, Baba, and Mwata. And we're looking forward to hearing much, much more. I dropped this little caveat. Look up Homecoming Gambia. Look up Mwata Speaks, so that you will be able to be part of the next journey and come with even more wise engagement and information. Until our next broadcast, live free, live safe, and always, always live up. Blessed love, everyone.
Love you all. We are